Welcome back to Open Line tonight. We are talking with two ladies from Planned Parenthood. We have Carrie Adams here with us, the CEO of Planned Parenthood for Middle and East Tennessee, and also Francie Hunt, the Executive Director of the Tennessee Advocates for Planned Parenthood. As I mentioned in the first segment, we had Senator Mark Pody on just last week to talk about some of the more right-to-life bills that have moved through this legislative session. That session is now wrapped up, and we wanted to invite you all as well to be able to tell us more about what's happening in our state as it comes to this type of funding and care. And that's what we're doing here in this hour. It is Open Line, so we will always jump to the lines. We'll go back and forth so we can continue to have this dialogue. We have, I believe it is Day on the line. Day, are you with me?
Yes.
Hi there. Thank you. Go ahead. What's your comment, question, concern?
I'm just wondering if you're endorsing any candidates this year?
Well, that is a good question. We're in the process. You know, tomorrow is election day. I want to remind everybody of that. So we will endorse candidates this year, and that would be under Tennessee Advocates for Planned Parenthood. I think I mentioned earlier that Tennessee Advocates for Planned Parenthood is a distinct organization from Planned Parenthood of Middle and East Tennessee, and we have another affiliate on the west side of the state called Planned Parenthood of Greater Memphis Region. But collectively, they fall under Tennessee Advocates for Planned Parenthood, which I can refer to as TAP for short. But our organization is set up to take on all kind of advocacy and political work. So we have a candidate questionnaire that we ask all candidates to fill out so we can have a sense of where they stand on our values. So and those tend to be around, you know, making sure that we have safe access to safe and legal abortion. You know, also making sure that we have healthcare access overall, and making sure that we have preventive care services that will be available to everyone that needs it. We also have a value around you know, keeping families together and protecting families. So in all of our communities, any way that we can align with other progressive organizations that stand with people of color or LGBTQ individuals, and that's immigrants. We also are partners within that.
It sounds like at this time you haven't endorsed any specific candidates. Are you waiting more towards November?
We will. We'll see. We'll probably do some sort of voter guide, so our own base kind of understands where different candidates fall on our level of support, but or at least educate them on the issues. But yeah, it'll probably be closer to November.
And will the candidate questionnaire or the voter guide be available on Tennessee Advocates for PP.org?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. TN Advocates for PP.org.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
There you go. Let's move on to Molly. Molly, thanks for hanging in there. What's your question?
Hi, I'm just wondering, why is it important for teens and people in general to have access to birth control?
That's a great question, and I think that that's something that is very connected to the value I mentioned earlier on, because the more that we can make sure that you know, it's inherent in our name, Planned Parenthood, that we take parenthood very seriously, and you know, ideally want to create a situation where individuals are ready to build their family, and part of that is birth control. Also, I think it's notable to say that you know, nationally, our unintended pregnancy rates have dramatically declined, and a large part of that is attributed to access to birth control. And so that's something that we're working towards as well. Now we are concerned around you know, cuts and limits on the teen pregnancy prevention program, and so that's something that we're monitoring here within the state, because we know that statewide, in counties where there are higher pregnancy rates, higher unintended pregnancy rates, and that's surprisingly more in rural areas. Those school districts are required to teach family life curriculum, but that teen pregnancy program is cut, and so that'll be something that we're going to monitor and see how that's going to impact numbers here in Tennessee. So I would urge legislators and local school districts to you know, be intentional about solving that.
Okay, let's move on to Keenan. Keenan's on the line. Thanks for calling in.
Yes, thank you for taking my call.
You're welcome.
So, like I said, I believe in Planned Parenthood. I believe it works. But I think the overall defunding, the constant conversation about it, mainly coming from the political side, is mainly just a white male issue because they want to roll things back to where they were at, where nobody had any rights except for them. Secondly, is that with that, they believe in a right to life, but it's only a right to be born, because once life begins and once a child is actually born, there are no programs to help the kids. There's no early education. The schools are pretty much poorly funded. And then you also have included with that, you have pretty much rampant gun violence to go with it, and then you have where they just pretty much fund the police and jails, but don't really do much for education. So it adds just pretty much on top of that. So it's not really a right to life; it's more or less a right to be enslaved, to go to death and be used for somebody else's own intention. But they really don't have the opportunity, or they barely have an opportunity to really have a life.
I would call that looking at the very, very big picture there. You're not looking at a very small window right there. Keenan, thank you for your insight. Appreciate it.
And I appreciate him making that point as well, because that was kind of what I was alluding to when I introduced myself, is that seeing all of the intersections, and Planned Parenthood operates in what we call an intersectional framework, which means that we look at not only reproductive health, but how all of these issues impact our lives. Because and you know, when I was devoted, and still am really, to making sure that we have great education and early education for our youngest ones, because that's such a pivotal time for learning, that we have to do it in an intentional manner. And so we have to look at how all of those pieces come together. And I think that the caller was right, that it's a lot of this is political posturing, and that's really too bad, because we lose an opportunity to actually make real impact for families and for health outcomes in Tennessee, which is gravely needed. We actually pushed for a bill, thankfully with Representative Johnny Turner's support out of Memphis, and another sponsor out of Nashville, Senator Jeff Yarbrough, called the Women's Health Equity Bill. And you know, that was something that across the board there should have been
universal support.
And I
what did it call for?
Well, it called for the expansion, and it would and enshrined the birth control provision within the Affordable Care Act, because we know that's somewhat tenuous at the federal level, because we saw 3 different attacks last year to get rid of the Affordable Care Act overall, and Planned Parenthood, our advocacy arm, worked very hard to defeat that all 3 times. And so what we were saying is that in Tennessee, no matter what happens, we want to make sure that that provision stays, that birth control equals women's health. And that's something I want to emphasize, that birth control equals women's health, not only from a contraception standpoint, but for an array of health and medical reasons. So that needs to stay in the healthcare coverage regardless of what happens at the federal level, because that's our state's right to protect our people. And so that was something that we moved this year. So I would really urge advocates, and for our politicians in particular, to think about proactive legislation, not things that increase the polarization of the electorate, which is another concern that we share. Because in this polarized environment, we're not actually able to dedicate our time and talent and brain space to the very things that we need to build a better future.
This is not just politics, it's people.
It is.
And it's the people that we serve and the people that we care about and should care about.
And in this proposal, it failed, right, in the committees. It never really got out.
It didn't make it out of committee. And you know, and we had private conversations with conservatives that just said that for political reasons they couldn't, not because of ideological, and that's sad.
Yeah. We're going to take another quick break. I see you, Jade and Lisa, Skip, Sarah, and Chloe. We're going to get to your calls right after this. We appreciate the conversation. We're coming right back.